Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Hmm. Morning, everybody. I'm showing 8:31 and about 23 of us. Laura, do you know if Alan's going to be on?
Alan is on.
Okay.
Jeff, I need to jump off. I got another call at 9 that I need to be on, but I'll be here till then.
Okay. Any words of wisdom before I dive in? We got 1 week under our belts.
I'm having trouble here. Yeah, we made it through the first week okay, and obviously with it being PE days at the same time, it was a busy week, but everything's looking good so far. We've got a bunch of stuff breaking on the Surfside legislation, so I'm gonna be busy with that for a few days here.
I'm sure. What do you think, y'all? We'll kick it off, and people may continue to trickle in. But good morning, everybody. Into the first week of session. Sorry for the late transmittal of the bill list, and I'll also let you know that bill list was done at the beginning of the week, so I owe you an updated bill list with the bill actions for this week. But I can talk you through them, and then I'll get you an updated list. Laura, I know you were expecting one yesterday afternoon, and that did not happen, so my apologies. Updated tracker is in your inbox. The other thing that's in your inbox is something that my firm did on the that big infrastructure bill, which is a gigantic, 1,000+ page document. But if you have an interest in any particular part of the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, I sent a document that has it's outlined and organized, so you can jump to the section you're interested in, and you can keyword search it for issues or policy topics that you may care about. And just let me know if you've got any more questions. I'm not pretending to understand a fraction of what's in here, but I may be able to get an answer for you if you really care about it. Any questions before I dive into activities this week? Okay. All right. So on the House, we had a committee meeting on Wednesday. Environment, Agriculture, and Flooding Subcommittee met, and they took up a few bills that we're tracking. And let me just give you a quick update. So first, HB 309, private provider inspections of on-site sewage treatment and disposal systems, that did pass out of its committee. It's moving on to Ag and Natural Resources Approach Subcommittee. So that's I'm hearing that's probably going to pass this year, and it's already starting to show some movement of that. We see the next one that was up on that committee is the comprehensive review study of the Central and Southern Florida project. That was also passed favorably out of the committee. And the last one that was on our tracking list that was on that committee was the inventories of critical wetlands, and that also passed through. So 3 of the bills are already starting to move. Like I said, the document that has the bill tracker, I'll get that updated and show the movement of those bills, and as I mentioned last week, I'll put them up towards the top of the list to show bills that have been moving. Over to the Senate, we did have a meeting actually the day before session started on Monday. Environmental and Natural Resources met in the afternoon. A couple of bills were on there that we care about, that are on our tracker. At least I won't pretend to say whether I know you care about it or not. But implementation of the recommendations of the Blue-Green Algae Task Force was on the committee. That's a bill by Stewart, and it passed through unanimously. The Riparian Rights Bill by Albritton is on our tracker. That's Senate Bill 840. That also passed through unanimously. And the companion bill, that inventories of critical wetlands, that's Senate Bill 882 by Broder. that also passed through unanimously. So we had some movement by 4 or 5 of the bills on our trackers, and again I'll get those organized and moved up to the top of our tracker list. Does anybody have any questions about the bills we're tracking, their status, any feedback from this week or concerns after talking to members? Anybody have anything on the tracking list? Okay. So I'm going to switch to a conversation I had with DEP. So we did have the CEQ meeting yesterday. I had Deputy Secretary John Truitt pretty much to myself. It was very low attendance, but had a chance to talk to him a little bit about this private provider bill since it was already moving, and I just took the opportunity to chat with him about it. As you all know, the Department of Environmental Protection got transferred the septic tank regulation program from the Department of Health this past summer, and they've been implementing the program and have had a technical advisory committee and on and on. So the private provider bill is just interesting because it seems to be fiddling with the department's brand new program, and that was the general sentiment of Truitt. That there's apparently some concerns that the inspection process isn't efficient and that the county health departments don't have enough employees, and so that if some list of criteria for who could be qualified to do those, if those could be met, could private providers do the same inspections as the county health department? And that's the gist of the bill. And Truitt said that he was given an opportunity to provide some input to it. He is actually comfortable with the current format. I think he's met with the sponsors, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's moving unopposed. DEP's gotten where they're comfortable with it. We talked a little bit about the PFAS legislation, even though they haven't been calendared yet, or at least I'm sorry, that there are some PFAS bills that have begun to be calendared, but they haven't. The major PFAS bills didn't move this week, and but we had a chance to talk a little bit about PFAS and the 2 different sets of bills that are going through. One establishes a task force. I think we talked about that last week. The other bill requires DEP to stop doing site assessments until PFAS standards have been set by the state, and it imposes some limitations on how and when DEP can set those standards. And Truitt's comments to me were actually and not surprisingly very insightful. He pointed out that with all of the planned regulations around PFAS that are happening at the federal level right now, that if DEP has its hands tied too tightly by strict timeframes by the legislature, that Florida may end up in a position of having federal standards applied for some period of time until DEP meets all the legislatively mandated criteria. So he's actually calling for a softening of some of the strict timeframes and limitations on the department as a way to mitigate potential EPA regulation of PFAS in the state. And I think that's a winning message and will probably carry the day in the 2 chambers. So it sounds like, and he did not disclose, but it sounds like some amendments to the second pair of PFAS bills. That's the Broxton version. That we're likely to see some changes as that moves through the process, and then we're also likely to see those sets of bills merge at some point. And then the other thing we talked about that our folks have been paying close attention to is the work of the Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee and the status of those rules. And what he shared with me is that the Stormwater TAC report will be published at the end of this month, so in a couple of weeks. The first draft of the new statewide stormwater rules will be forthcoming sometime thereafter. He was a little dodgy when I tried to pin him down on exactly when we'd see it. I suspect it would be towards the end of session or maybe even after session, just to prevent, distraction around, potential pushback or acrimony about those new rules. He does expect them to be controversial. I do too. I think they're going to be significantly raising the bar on the regulation of stormwater, which was directed by SB 712 2 years ago. So it should come as no surprise, but I think the sticker shock is still going to cause a lot of people to be upset. And so the workshops that would follow the first draft of the rule are probably going to last a while. But his goal is to have rulemaking well underway by the summer, and have the bill, or excuse me, have the rule finalized towards the end of 2022, so it can be ratified next session in 2023. So if anybody was expecting stormwater regulations this year, that should clarify that. Nothing this year on stormwater regs. And with that, I will open it up to any questions. I want to go tap, tap, tap. Is my mic working? Sorry, what was that, Bill? I saw your note. Let me find it again.
Hey, Jeff. Obviously, relative to PFAS, we disagreed with what they were doing last year. The department pushed on anyway. Did you get any sense that I can tell my client to stop investigating?
So the True, it's a little dodgy. I had Tim Barr in the room too, and I said it's pretty difficult to be pushing. I mean, I've leaned on them heavily in the past. They believe they're doing what's required of them by EPA. So
Yeah.
if you follow the EPA guidance to states, they have issued sets of guidance that include things like categories of facilities that they want state programs to be out sampling. And it all goes to EPA trying to collect, enough information to promulgate a set of standards, national standards. So the department just thinks it's doing what it's obligated to do. I know our folks in the state have had a lot of concerns about, doing sampling, which under 62780 is going to trigger, the continuation of sampling until you get to clean margins. How do you know what's a clean margin if you don't know what the standard is? And they understand that there's a bit of a not a catch-22, but it's an unending do loop potentially until there's some state standards. So I mean, their explanation seems to be, we're just going to exercise our discretion not to force you to do stuff that we're not asking you to do. But to me, that's unsatisfactory. I think in the absence, let's say the legislation doesn't do what we all want, which is to get them to stop. I think we're going to need to push hard during this session for some kind of written guidance or an explanation by the department of what it does and doesn't intend to do and where it intends to limit itself. And I think if we can get some of that in writing, I mean, I was kind of captivated by John Truitt's explanation of how bad it could be if the legislature ties the hands of DEP. They certainly can't tie the hands of EPA, and which which agency would we rather have working in the state on PFAS, DEP or EPA? And I certainly agree. I'd rather have DEP. So he just said, be careful what you ask for. If we miss some deadline for promulgating a standard, or we're unable to adopt a fast track adopt a federal standard, then the federal standard is going to apply, and so on and so forth. I'm repeating myself now.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors. I get it.
Yeah.
And then the only other would be funding, right? These are all unfunded mandates, and they still think it's okay.
Yeah. So I had kind of an off the record, let's pretend we're omniscient and can predict the future, and is the in-state that there'll be some major multi-billion dollar, settlement of the multi-state litigation, and that there'll be a giant, trust fund from which DEP can draw, or states, can draw and create their own, recurring funding, or a trust fund to fund a program, and then the program could go out and do a bunch of assessments, do some source removal, but at the end of the day, are we just going to be documenting regions of the state that have PFAS concentrations in excess of the human health standard, and we delineate all those areas like we delineated, EDB or Dieldrin, because we all know it's not going to be cost effective, at least with current technology, not going to be cost effective to clean it all up to the parts per trillion standards that are being talked about. And, Tim Barr isn't going to say, yeah, I agree with you. That's exactly what we're going to do. But he was nodding as I was talking, and Truitt seemed to believe that something like that is likely to be the final plan, some variation of that. Does that make sense to you, Bill? I mean, is there any
they're hard to
wisdom?
make sense of, but you did speak, so we'll see how it goes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, anything else? Looking for, oh, there's the show conversation button. Good morning, Kevin. Any more questions?
Morning.
All right, I'm happy to be efficient with everybody's time, and we'll let you go early. As I mentioned, I will owe you an updated tracker with the movement from this week's events, and if for any of those bills that are scheduled to be heard next week, I'll have those highlighted as well. And unless anybody else has any last minute, wish you all a great weekend. Talk to you next week.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Bye, Joe.
Thanks, Jeff.
Looks like it should not happen.